gavel, there you go, 6 p.m. Please stand and join with me in the pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Richard, I don't see anybody on, do you see?
Rand says that they should join here in a minute.
Oh, okay. Let's see what happens.
Oh, I look
All
like I'm
right.
reclining.
So we are here tonight for the work session and we are going to be discussing some board policies, so Mr. Weigel, I'll let you take over.
Okay, sounds good. So the first one we looked at, we looked at this policy, professional staff fringe benefits, and the reason this was brought up by me, because it was connected to substitute pay. So any kind of reimbursement for accruals was connected to the substitute pay. So if we increased our substitute pay, that means we were also increasing how much our certified staff would get when they would leave the district, right? So it kind of costs us double amount than just say, hey, let's separate that out. Right now it's $50 per day or for 8 hours. That's what the teachers would get if they leave after their continuing contract. So we met with the policy committee, talked with them. We were gonna put it on the evaluation part of the last board meeting, but then IBB wanted to kind of go through that, so I did meet with the IBB folks to make sure everything was kosher before we actually brought it to you guys' attention. So we did have some suggestions with the policy committee and along with IBB to go through that. So you'll see some changes in terms of what we think would be good adjustments in terms of the red would be things we added and the strike through would be ones we're proposing that we would take out of the current policy. But the reason we brought that up because it was connected to how much people are getting paid when they left. And it was connected to sub pay. And I'm guessing at one time they probably came up with the idea that said, hey, how are we gonna reimburse our folks for not using their leave? Well, let's just give them half what we're gonna pay our subs. Made sense then, but it does kind of hinder us a little bit if we wanna increase sub costs, it's gonna cost us the other way. So I think everybody understood that. They weren't losing any money in terms of the $50 or the hourly rate. Our accruals are based on hourly, so that's why we have that hourly amount for both administrators and certified staff. So the first part of it, if you look at, that'll show us what our recommendations are gonna be moving forward. And then I thought it might be easy just to look and see exactly what it looks like. So if you look at page 2, it actually has all the revisions taken out. So you can kind of see it's reduced that policy quite a bit. Talks about insurance, talks about retirement costs, and it does have the hourly of $6.25 per hour is what they would get reimbursed for, the number of hours they would have in their accruals. Now it'd be PTO or sick leave, that's what the certified staff would get. That would be the same with our administrative group.
Okay.
And to qualify, I think you have to be in your 4th consecutive year as administrator, and you have to be continuing contract as a certified teacher.
And so that rate would not be under review by the board, that's gonna be a set rate and stay.
So our policy change, we didn't recommend anything going up at this time, we just wanted to separate that from our substitute pay. So if we wanted to do something more for our substitutes, we could without having us to pay double as a district.
Thoughts, comments?
Got a stupid question, I think. The administrator starting their 4th consecutive contract, do they have to have a 4th contract before that hourly rate starts, or?
Before they get reimbursed for their leave. That's what it says in policy, we didn't want to change that.
Okay.
Everybody good? Understand that one?
Good with that one?
Next.
Okay, this is one that Jamie worked on. I think we talked with you guys about some of the issues we're having with turning in receipts, and some of the receipts were for things like coffees and just little things like that. So Jamie did some research and put this together. We did run this by, again, the policy committee and then again IBB. And the only suggestion that was made to us, and this is new, it's a new regulation. If you look on page 2 where it talks about lodging, we would try to have our staff actually attend that conference where the actual convention is happening. Cause it's a little more convenient, you don't have to think about taking buses or Ubers and all that kind of stuff. And sometimes those event centers might be a little more expensive than what the government rate is. So we wanted to make sure we added that to that, but it's really gonna save the business department lots of time with trying to go through receipts and trying to figure out who is what, and they're being a lot more strict with some more federal grants where they wanna know how many people were at the dinner, right? How many of this, how many of that, so it's kind of like eliminate some of that, if you're gonna go to a conference, we'll pay for the hotel before you go, we'll pay for your travel before you go. If there's 3 days, we look and say, hey, what is the breakfast, lunch and dinner? If the convention doesn't provide those,
Yep.
right? They provide them, there would be no reimbursement for the staff. And they'd actually get a check before they would leave, so they have that money, if they wanna spend a big something on maybe a large dinner, they can. They wanna skip breakfast and lunch and go out to a really nice dinner, it's up to them. They wanna buy 10 coffees, totally up to staff. Whatever they
Very
wanna do.
cool, I like
So-
it.
Jim, do you have anything?
No, I think that pretty much covers it. Like I said, I think it just gives a little bit more flexibility for the staff to be able to do what they want. If you're not a big breakfast eater, then like you said, you can go out and have a nicer dinner.
And you think time-wise it's gonna save
Oh,
our
yeah.
folks tons of time?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of trying to track down the receipts and then, like you said, with certain grants, they're just getting more and more picky about what you can get a reimbursement for. So this will take care of that. They'll fill that out when they, request to go on professional development. It'll require a, itinerary essentially of your conference so that we know if meals are being provided or if you're going to need dinner only. Like I said, I think it'll help a lot with the tracking of receipts.
Perfect. Any comments, questions about that? Anybody? All right.
Good.
Moving on to the next.
Okay, so the next one, this is something that I think we checked into at the beginning of the year. I worked with Josh a little bit about this, trying to give a little more flexibility to our peak high school students. The ones who maybe aren't interested or aren't successful in some electives, but they do wanna work. That just kind of puts something in there for them, and this policy was put in place in '98, probably pretty innovative 26 years ago. But I keep asking, like, what's alternative about our high school, right? It's not alternative just to learn from a computer. What else, what other flexibilities are there? What else are we doing to motivate kids to finish their diploma? You know, some kids have to work, maybe because of their home situation or other situations, and sometimes they leave high school just to work full-time. We'd like to keep them in school and give them some options to get some credit for work. So that's kind of driving a lot of that. And I think that first paragraph, and remind me, Josh, about this one, I think we wanted the policy to actually fit what you were doing in your handbook, or from 1 to 3, was it? Or tell
Yeah,
me
so currently it was 1 or 2 periods, and we have talked about going to 3 class periods, so we could do it, I mean, we could do a mixture of work study, or we could mix it with internship. But we have kids that are on track for graduation, and, you know, with some of the things that we're gonna be doing with the governor's ride program, we wanted just a little bit more flexibility to do that. The other piece in the handbook, I'm allowed to give up to 3 hours of work, or credits of work study. And so this just matches what's in the handbook a little bit closer. So we'll have to work with, it'll be me now, working with Peggy to coordinate, those students and those hours, and we ask for copies of their pay stubs, and so when we get those in, I would track it, the teacher's gonna track it, I would check it, Peggy checks it for her reporting, and so there's lots of just making sure that we're on the right track, because it could impact credits for graduation, so we just wanna make sure we have all of that in place.
So,
Yeah, go ahead.
would that be primarily like during the day, or can they also be gaining credit if they work after school?
Yeah, it's during it could be during the day, it could be after school, it could be in the summer. Normally if a kid, what we've done in the past is if a kid is a junior going to be a senior, We've allowed them to start earning, turning in their work hours from August first. But with like the peak high school students, they may, you know, when we wanna get them into those work study hours, that's where we have some different flexibilities to, you know, let them work all summer to earn that credit. Instead of instead of sitting in front of the computer for another elective credit.
Yeah.
And right now we have peak high school students can earn up to 9 credits of work study.
Nice.
And so that equates to 1,800 hours of time that they would have to submit to us to document.
And there could be a portfolio, with the right program, we might enhance some of the things we're asking kids to do, reflect on things they've learned maybe at work, I mean, there's some of the things that are gonna go with that a little bit, so. I think everybody remembers maybe a time where you worked for somebody, and I learned a lot when I was in high school working for a custodian, right? He taught me how to do the work right the first time, so those things carry over, there's things you learn.
Oh,
And sometimes you hear like, well, what if they don't do this, but isn't it good they learn it while they're in high school instead of they're out on their job and having to pay their own bills and stuff, so there's some things you're gonna work through, but I think it's a good opportunity, so.
I love
I think it'll be good.
The only thing that you need to remember is if they have those 3 hours, they have to have at least 300 work hours each semester, and if they don't, then they don't get credit. Which then they become a part-time student, which then they are no longer eligible for honor roll, valedictorian, and things like that.
Wow.
We have students right now that struggle to get the 100 hours, right? Because we're sharing them with basketball, football, cheer, and all of that, right? So they don't make those 100 hours. And then a co-op class is pass-fail, right? So you either pass it or you fail it. We haven't been assigning Fs to those students that have not made the 100 hours, but they have not been given credit because they haven't earned it, so then therefore they become a part-time student. So that's something to think about. I'm not sure that we would need 3 hours of the day. I mean, for students. Peak students have always, since it started, been able to earn co-op credit, and they earn it from actually June 1st of that summer and that whole year. There hasn't been a peak high school student yet that has needed 9 credit hours. And the other thing that we've noticed, I just sent Josh a report the other day asking about like our CTE numbers from the year before to this year. And like woodworking was 80, this year 56. Ag 119, this year 102. And we added, right, 2 co-ops. A kid could take 2 co-ops this year. So just in 1 year, it affects it. And now that you guys have decided to lower their electives down to 12, that's gonna affect the electives as well. So it's just something to keep in mind. We could be co-oping our woodworking and our ag and our art and our band right out of our system. So we need to be mindful of all of that. I think we can still accomplish what Josh wants to accomplish with what we have in place right now for 2 co-ops, a mentorship, those types of things. Peak kids still earning co-op credit from junior and senior on.
So on average, you know, if a student's missing so many credit hours, what is the average that they're needing to make up?
The majority of the kids need to make up their core. That's what also we need to be mindful of, okay? It's not necessarily their electives,
Oh, okay.
because they still keep taking electives, right? And typically they're behind in their core.
In their core.
Algebra 1, geometry, right? English 1 or 2, survey of American history. So that's a majority of what they're behind in. Because we allow, right,
now that our credits have changed, but prior to this, we allowed them to have the opportunity to get 30 credits, but we only required them to have 28. So you could fail 4 semesters, right? And still get your 28. So you could fail some electives, but you cannot fail core and not make them up.
And not make it. Okay.
So what do you do to fix that? What's the,
Well, this provides flexibility for me as the building principal for certain situations. I don't see a whole lot of kids going to 3 work study, but it gives me the flexibility to have that as an option.
That's my question, this isn't for everybody. And
It's not
this is-
everybody.
So
When we
you
start,
have
when
sole
we start
discretion?
when we start talking about kids moving from, and we did it this year, from the 1 period to the 2 periods, they had my permission. They came and talked to me, I talked to their parents, so the parents understood exactly what was going on, how many hours were gonna be needed per semester. And so those are the conversations, so this just allows me the flexibility to do that on a case by case basis if we need to do the work study. Cause we also have the internship class, which is something that we would like to do, is to, if a kid has an interest in some, maybe they have an interest in, I don't know, legal work. And they wanna go down and work with one of our local attorneys, but they also have a job at Subway or something. That gives them the ability to do both, as long as they're on track for graduation.
That's what I was gonna say, Josh, maybe you should explain, because some of them might not know the difference between co-op and occupational mentorship. I don't know, I could be wrong, if you are, stop me, but if you're confused about it, maybe.
I'd like the explanation.
So co-op is what we would consider work study. In that class period, you would go to work, you would turn in your pay stubs, so we can see how many hours you're working. Okay? Occupational mentorship is the internship piece where you go during your class period, you could go, I mean, you could go to an attorney's office, you could go to the vet clinic, you could go, to the
Hospital maybe.
hospital, you go to the public library. And you don't have to turn any pay stubs in, you're getting that experience at that place of work.
And then you work with that employment
Yep,
place and that piece, and you're getting a report back from them that they showed up and all of
Yeah.
that, right? Okay.
So do you have final say on whether a student can do that? You're the only one that they have to go through, correct?
And I'll speak right to it, Wyatt was one of the first ones to jump right square in the middle of the 2 co-op hours last year. So I got spooled up on it pretty quick, it worked out well for him, he would be the first one sitting here knocking on wood, telling me he'd be the first one up for 3 if he was coming back. But it was his position that he only really needed 1 core class, is all he really needed to graduate. And so, in discussions with Mr. Sandlin, it's like, well, if he's gonna go out and work for this particular outfit, they're quite a ways out of town, so a 1 hour thing may not work out so good, let's put him in for 2 and see where it goes. And it seemed to work slick as far as I know, and then that kind of fizzled, he kind of shifted it into another deal, but off and running,
we
but
have
yeah,
had, we've had
works slick.
students that semester where, as we're all looking at the reports and we're going, this kid's not gonna make it. They barely made it to the 100 hours for the fall semester, let's switch them over to the internship. So that they're continuing to earn credit. So we look at it, I feel comfortable with the teachers, with Peggy, looking at kids on a case by case basis and if they can earn that's the other thing, having a frank discussion about can you earn those hours, that's part of it. And so I feel comfortable with what we've done in the past and where we're headed in the future to say, this is not gonna be every single kid. But there may be a kid out there that this works for.
Right.
Peggy, sorry to bring this back up, but what was your concern again? So I get all this straight?
My concern is them not getting credit.
Because
Yeah.
of the hours.
I'm usually checking it right at the end, like our student, we had a student last year that graduated early and she didn't make it until 2 weeks into June. So she really shouldn't have graduated, May, whatever, 23rd that we graduated last year, right? She didn't make it. So, that is my concern and I see it a lot. And it's hard because we don't want to, we don't want to hurt the student or whatever, but at the same time, some of these, like this year, some of our kids that did have 2 co-op hours turned in their pay stubs and all of a sudden no longer was the business name on top of the pay stub. So why is that? So are we making up stuff as we go? Which, it's not my concern, cause I'm not the boss, but if we are to get audited, I'm sure it's gonna be their concern, as to why we are issuing credit when there's not a business name any longer on top of that.
Do you think it's a bad idea to do this?
I don't think it's a bad idea, I don't think 3 hours is necessary. We could do a work release, which a work release, that would mean the student, we would only get the student for a half a day, meaning our ADM would be a half a day for that student, then 3 hours in the afternoon, we wouldn't count them for ADA, ADM. When we're doing co-op, we are counting them for ADA, ADM, because we tie standards to our assignments, but right now, these last few years, that kinda hasn't happened. We say that the students are meeting these standards, but they're not being tied to the 4 assignments, cause she only puts 4 assignments in there, which is 4 pay stubs for 4 months, right? So, it's not working quite like I think it should be, quite like we used to run it. So maybe, I kind of feel like we need to get the new guy in here, get his input, see how if he's done this stuff before and how it's gonna work,
Okay.
That's my concern.
Thank you.
I just hate being at the end and like, okay, this kid isn't gonna make it and, oh, thankfully, he's got 28 credits, so I guess it's okay that he didn't get, and we can't keep thinking that,
Right.
You made your 28, okay, good, we don't have to worry about it now. So,
Thank you.
Well, and I wonder too about communication to the, in this circumstance that you described, to the employer, about the necessity of their name on the stuff, because I can tell you, just as you were saying that, it saved me quite a bit of money to not put it on the stuff, so I didn't.
I hope the
It
same
wasn't
thing.
me, but I stopped having them print that on mine, so I don't know, it might be something simple as, just making sure to communicate to any potential employers in that.
Would it be better if the employer had to call the school and tell them that they worked, or?
Well, I don't know, there should be ways of verification.
Well, usually in the past, they would actually go and visit like weekly with the employers, and I'm not sure that has happened for a while,
Oh,
but,
okay. So some areas that could be tightened up for sure.
And communication to the employer, the fact that we need these 100 hours in order to get that
Yeah.
credit, that seems to be something that they need to have a record of where we're at to make that goal. Cause it's really ultimately their offering in the first place, those hours, right?
Yeah.
So,
So not that many changes to the policy though, I mean, right? Yeah.
and I don't think a freshman, are you talking freshmen at Peak High School?
Yeah,
I don't think that freshmen at Peak High School need to already start earning co-op,
I'm gonna disagree a little bit because I think sometimes freshmen have different needs. Not a lot of them, but there might be 1 or 2. If we're not flexible with some of these kids, we're gonna lose them. So it depends how we wanna get our graduation rate up, but I don't think we wanna give up on kids. But I think some kids have a notion when they're in middle school or junior high, like, I'm gonna drop out because I'm gonna go to work.
Right.
Well, if it keeps working, listen, you take your course, we might be able to work with you on some electives, and maybe they mature a little bit, maybe they come back and get involved in some other electives they might like, or maybe they get turned on to something in their work and said, I'd like to maybe start building cabinets or whatever, well, we have a woodworking. I think at peak, we just needed a little more flexibility that they don't have. That's just my own personal idea, but
So
Or they
this
just will graduate early,
what's that?
so, right,
Well,
that's,
peak
if we start letting them at freshmen, there's the good possibility that if they have 9 credits that they can earn, they could already graduate in a couple of years, so.
And do you have a question? Sorry.
Is it just, well, I know that peak was,
So the first sentence, the first paragraph says junior and seniors, that's really based for the Wheeling High School students.
peak high school's 9 through 12, but like the 3, what'd you say, it sounded 3 hours, is that for the high school
The
program?
high school is only 3.
Only 3, peak high school is,
And it was seniors only, and
okay, but now is it?
And the reason we changed it for peak high school was instead of trying to get alternative students to get through 14 elective credits, let's give them the flexibility to earn some work credits instead of just trying to get through another course. You know, if they needed to work, they had that flexibility. So we allowed 9 of the 14 credits to be from work related hours.
And I think in that first paragraph, I think if as it currently states, we probably wouldn't allow any kids from peak because it says you have to be, his school performance must be average or above. Not need for credit, well, a lot of the kids at peak, I'm probably saying need recovery credit or having issues getting credit. So even that kind of conflicts with some of the things, so.
Your
that's why
argument
I
is
said-
it's the wrong credit, right?
it's not,
Essentially that they're not getting the education they need, right?
they need, they're mainly short on their core, not
Yeah, the core,
elective.
yeah, I couldn't think of the word, they're short on their core
Mhm.
credits.
So am I understanding right that they can get enough credits through this work program that their core is still gonna suffer and they're gonna graduate? Is that what I'm hearing?
So, for instance, a student this year, right, he had already had all of his co-op credit, but we needed him to finish 3 social studies classes.
Okay.
Okay, that's what we were waiting on.
Yeah.
3 social studies classes at Peak High School.
Would it, I don't know if this is right, but would it be like a deal where if they, so take Peak High School for instance, which maybe they already do this, so 9 credit, 9 working hours, right? Or 9 credit working hours at Peak High School? Would you like stop all other electives, so like they go to work for their 9 hours thing, and then all they do is their core when they go to Peak? Is that right? Is that how? Would that be a fix for that at Peak High School level?
It could be, I mean, if they came in the morning and worked on core classes, their 4 cores, they could go to work in the afternoon, or vice versa.
And so credit recovery happens sometimes during the summer, and sometimes kids have to double up, they might take English 9, 10, 11, sometimes 12. Right? I mean, that happens.
I'm just trying
But
to figure out a way.
if students haven't passed 3 math courses, or 3 science courses, or their 4 English courses, or their 3 social studies courses, they don't graduate.
Okay.
We're only talking about elective credit.
Okay,
So
Oh.
they could, I mean, if they kept earning what Peggy was saying, what this one kid just he got all of his elective credit, he just didn't finish the core class, so he has to have for graduation.
okay. And that answers
So-
my question.
We don't let them get to 9 and say, they're good, there's the other requirements of the cores that they have to meet.
But I love the idea of what you're saying is that there's a percentage of students you do lose. And maybe we can reel some of those in, and that would be awesome if this would be the ticket to do that.
Flexibility,
Flexibility.
is offering some flexibility. Yeah, not too much change from what it was originally, and I think, you know, with good oversight, which I trust that you'll have, and very good. Okay, thank you, everybody, for contributing.
Sorry, I really make that longer.
That's what we're here for, is to make sure everybody understands it. Gets their questions answered. So, alright, next we're on to parental rights, parents' rights.
Yep, so we just brought this up again just to make sure everybody's on the same page. This is something we have to do. It does give parents, I guess, more rights, like it says, that's what it's for. And when I went through this with our principals, they felt like we do this already. If we see a major change in the students, we try to reach out to parents. We're not a big district, or we're trying to hold some things back, like a Rock Springs. I think, Sean, you mentioned that, like this was kind of geared off the Rock Springs issue, so I don't see it being a huge issue for us, because I think parents should know if you see some differences academically, or see some difference behaviorally or emotionally, whatever's going on, right? You reach out to the parents, because we want to work together with our parents. And the other part, I think if you look at some of the, outside of just the changes, there's some other things that talk about notification of instruction, the healthcare services, and that's a questionable one, and I just got an email today from our WASA group that some districts are looking at, like what's routine health care? What is like
Right.
a scrape, or what is something where it's whatever? There's some things we're gonna work through, and other districts are already doing that, so I think collectively, the Wyoming districts are gonna come together and come up with some pretty good ideas that might be put into as regulations following this policy. I think that's just gonna take a little bit of time. And of course, you know, questionnaires and all those things will be something that we do have to, you know, notify parents, and they can opt out of those things. So, I don't
And
think,
so,
oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, I would just make sure our principals felt like, hey, a lot of this comes down to the building principal. And like I said, I would say every one of them said, we do this anyway. This is what we should be doing, we're doing it anyway. So I didn't feel any resistance from our group at all when we went through it during the meeting, so.
Well, and the way that it was written and everything, that came directly through WSBA or
Yeah, so the model
the
policy,
model
yeah,
policy.
Good, I was wondering,
Yeah.
Yeah, it has the feel.
And there's a complaint if the district didn't do something in this, and they would have a complaint, so there is a way to try to resolve the issue. So, but the principals really are gonna be the big person on this one, trying to make sure those things are getting out to parents, so.
Again, required by state legislation.
Right.
Model policy is through the Wyoming School Board Association. Any discussion? You guys, any questions, comments?
And those are referenced in the policy itself, the statute, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's,
Really well done.
So the next one is the AE, so when I was kind of going through some of our policies, I saw this, so we're right in the middle of trying to, I guess, finalize the strategic plan with some of those benchmarks. So instead of just having one approval, my thought would be, since this is in policy already, we'd have to go in like an evaluation, first reading, second reading, with the work the committee did on the strategic plan, and the actual kind of benchmarks and follow-up, remember, from surveys to kind of our accountability reports, all that will be kind of part of this, but it is a policy currently. I would think we would want to continue with that, just replace our strategic plan in this policy.
just put it in there. So in terms of, as it is written here, we're just adding the new strategic plan.
Yeah, so this was 2014, the last
Right.
time this was changed, so this would all be deleted, and we
Deleted,
have our
okay.
new strategic plan with
Okay,
the actual benchmarks
okay.
and how we're gonna report out. That was one of the goals, so
Okay.
we just get it a little more up to date.
Perfect. Thanks.
Any comment or question on that? Alright. Next.
Okay, the health and wellness, so this sample policy really is something we need for our food service. audit coming up. They do tie in wellness to this, even though it's a food service audit, which is kind of unique. We've heard from other districts that said the audit for food services is one of the most difficult things they've went through. There is funding attached to it if you don't meet all the requirements from the FDA and all those things and the state of Wyoming. They can withhold and they will withhold certain amount from your free and reduced lunches. So you might get 10 cents less than you normally would because you didn't meet the requirements. So we just wanna get ahead of the game a little bit. If we know this is a policy, we need to put this in place. It's a have to. I mean, there's no wiggle room on this one at all. It does talk about having a committee and goals, and there's a lot of work behind the policies, but this is kind of the first step to get this on your radar and kind of move forward with it, so we can have this in place when we go through our audit.
And we've not had this particular one.
I think we've had one, but it doesn't have the details or the requirements.
Okay.
And that was another one that was just brought up because of that audit.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
Questions, comments? Alright,
and I think that's all the policies.
that's all the policies, alright, so we'll hit those up again next week. Okay, so just as a reminder for us, the superintendent evaluation will be next Monday. I sent you guys all a copy of the full thing, and we are doing 1 and 4?
1 and 4.
1 and 4. And invite anybody at home watching, whatever, if anybody has any comments they'd like to share with the board, they're always welcome. But we'll be doing that on Monday. The board evaluation process. Well, I'm gonna tie them together because if you look at what we voted on for the superintendent evaluation process, it states that every July, we will get together and plan the evaluation for the following year. So normally we would have, we talked about, we collectively as a group, we decided to have a roundtable every quarter. That would be in June. We're not gonna do that until July, and part of our roundtable will be setting the superintendent evaluation for the following year per the policy that we voted on.
So basically setting meaning which standard we're gonna review?
And how we're gonna do it and how if we're gonna, like right now, the surveys went out to the district leadership, and are we going to send it anywhere else? Are we gonna do something different? How is it gonna look? We're gonna plan the entire year's, the 2 evaluations in the 12-month period. We'll do that in July.
Nice.
Okay, so that will be our roundtable. We'll do that. We'll finish up, talk a little bit more about I think we got a lot out of the last roundtable with our board evaluation, just talking amongst ourselves. And then Diane and Dustin and I, how are you guys doing on your stuff for the binder?
I'm good.
Okay.
It's got all kinds of cool highlighted marks in that thing.
Okay, we will get together and we'll have something, I said last month that we'd have it at June's meeting for people to look at and add and subtract or whatever, so.
So, just for clarification, that is the onboarding for new board members?
Yeah, sorry.
That's
Thanks
okay,
for the
I just wanted everybody to
Committee
know what we were talking
Yeah.
about.
So I guess I had a question on that. The calendar items was mine. Is that the school calendar or is that the calendar for the board?
The calendar for the board.
Yeah, I figured, okay.
Alright. Anything else? That's all I have.
So I guess my only question would be just for clarifications, on our own evaluation. we are officially doing that, what's the timeframe there? July?
I believe so.
Okay, or
Yeah,
I
we'll
don't
talk
know.
about it in our roundtable and make sure that we're
Just
all on
to-
the same page.
To button that up. I didn't know if it had already been established, so that's why.
I don't think it has.
Okay.
I think it's kind of fluid until we had another roundtable. We decided on which tool to use. Now we're gonna decide how we're
Right.
gonna use the tool.
And the tool came from some trainings that we did with WSBA, just for everybody's information.
Anything else? Anything else? Last call. All right. Adjourned. Thank you.
So I look up and down.
That's right. Thought about it earlier and then squirrel, to go get it.
We just need practice.
Oh,